So I'm back at it on the 65 here. Pulled the hood off, pulled the one fender off yesterday, and then kind of got tied up with some other stuff. But I'm going to pull this side fender off, the inner fenders off both sides. Then I can take the rad support out, set it aside, and I got some very minor wiring to unhook because I think a lot of this wiring I'm going to try and reuse once I get it into the other chassis, like this here being the start wire, that yellow guy. I can use that to feed my start wire when I have it on the other chassis. So basically the way that this was set up is that this wire here runs everything. This is the main power wire to the whole, this whole kind of power distribution here, which then runs into the cab and controls everything. It's where it takes power from the alternator. So I can use just this one wire to run everything on the GM side of the cab, which isn't very much really. You're talking headlights, this horn, like your headlight, and then power into the cab to run your taillights, brake lights. There's one wire for the blower fan, like a wire, this one for on each side for the turn signals. There's really fuck all to it. Got the fuel draining out into a pail. I just popped the line off the bottom of the tank where it comes out of the cab. Shoved a new piece of line on just to run it into this pail. I think it had about a half a tank, but I don't think the tank in this thing holds a ton of fuel, so that's fine. I'm just gonna let that drain out. I got the front cab supports undone. Now basically I just have to do the master cylinder and the steering linkage, and the cab should be ready to come off. And I think that's gonna be a next weekend thing. But yeah, I'll be yanking this off, and then I'm gonna set it on the Dodge frame, just on some wooden blocks, and then I can figure out how my cab mounts are gonna be on the other chassis, and then I can figure out the position of the rad support, because I need to do some measurements and see if where it sits right now, how the Cummins is gonna fit in that space, because it's gonna be tight, and I may have to go with a different rad setup. I probably should use something different, but I'm gonna try this one probably just because it'll be the easiest one to mount up, and it leaves me with some room for an intercooler in front of that. And I have a second gen intercooler, and I also have a Duramax rad and intercooler that may come into play here. We'll see. But there should be enough room. If I were to trim these out, I could probably get the rad further ahead too, and then put the intercooler into the grill or something like that. So I went and measured the footprint that the Cummins takes, and it's about 41 inches from the back of the motor to the fan. And right here I've got about 38 and a half from right against the firewall to the rad. So, but if I get down lower, it grows a little bit. So I may have to raise the cab, and I may have to do a bit of a body lift to get it all to fit and push the rod forward, which if I were to use this one, it might not be enough for it, but Cummins run pretty cool anyway. But if I were to move the rad ahead, then I could probably get away with it. And even just I can gain probably an inch just if I trimmed this lip out of here. I could probably move it ahead about an inch, and that would, like, an inch would go a long way. So I've got the cab basically ready to pull. Probably gonna do it next weekend, and go from there. So I'm getting ready to pull the cab. I got the tractor warming up inside. Gonna yank the Dodge frame outside with it, and then I'm going to yank the cab off of this. My old man's coming to help me. Just got a couple things to take off before I pull it off, but I'm pretty much ready to go. I just cut this fucking steering shaft because there's a 12-point socket right there that could undo this coupler, but there's no way it's coming apart. I swear by these Torch Milwaukee Sawzall blades, it just ate through that shaft like it was nothing. I just have to undo the e-brake or the parking brake cable, and I'm probably just going to cut these. These are tied to the PTO that's under there that doesn't even work anyway, so I'm going to get rid of that. Just have to pop those 2 coolant lines off. I might just shove something in them and plug them off. The only reason I have the clamps undone, I just need to pull them off so I can actually, they were just spilling coolant, so I'm just going to plug them up somehow, and that'll be it. Should be ready to pull. So I got the cab sitting on the frame. I got to do a lot more spacing to figure out where things are going to sit, but I got to let some air out of the tires, I think, just to get it back in the door, because this back rack thing that's on here was just clear coming out the door, and I got the cab sitting about the same height. So I'm going to air it down a little bit, try and get it shoved back inside, and then I can play around with it and figure out where the cab's actually going to sit, because I'm going to bring my fenders in, bolt my fenders on, so I can figure out. I think I'm going to have to push the cab as far forward as I can, which sucks because there's going to be a huge gap in between the back of the cab and the back rack. The second gen cab is quite a bit physically longer. But I'll get the thing back inside and I can start playing around with it and start cleaning up some of this mess. Figure out how my hydro boost is going to bolt up and go from there. So I got the cab pushed quite a bit further forward. I think this is just about kind of close to where it's going to have to be. There's not very much. There's about maybe an inch there between the back of the motor and the firewall, and that one injector. I guess the one injector line's about the same. So anyway, it's kind of close to where it has to be. The steering linkage kind of works with the factory shaft. I might have to. I think this is a bit of a slip shaft, so I think I can hammer it down a little bit and get a bit, like, make it a bit shorter. Yeah, so I got, right now I just have it sitting with those cross members sitting on the factory Dodge cab supports. It's pretty close to where it's going to be. I think I'm going to use those front cab supports. I still got to do some tweaking and get things squared up, and it's sitting on this rear cross member back here, which is pretty good. It's kind of working. The only thing that sucks is that I threw a fender on just to kind of do a bit of a mock-up, and it's not bad. It just would be nice if the axle sat 6 inches further ahead. But the fact of the matter is that this may be how it has to be. If there's a bit, if the front axle's not totally centered on the wheel well, it is what it is. I mean, I'm already going to have to run electric fans, and I'm fighting for clearance, because there's 5 inches basically was what my measurement was. It's basically about 5 inches difference, and I got to gain that somewhere. And it might have to be in here, and if the wheel sits further back in the wheel well, it is what it is, but it doesn't look the greatest. But it's not that bad considering where the height that it's sitting at right now is like fairly jacked up, and it looks kind of cool that way. But so I went and ripped the rad support off the frame that it came off of, and just did a quick mock-up, bolted it, just one bolt up to each fender, just kind of so I can see what it's going to look like, and it looks fucking sweet, really. The rad support is really just sitting there at the moment. I need to figure out, I need to take some measurements. I think it looks like the mounts land right on that front support. So I might be able to just drill some holes, and let's see. It does land somewhere down there, but I might have to play around with it. But I have all the rubber all the rubber pucks and stuff and washers that came out, and I just need to I had to cut the bolts because they're carriage bolts, and carriage bolts suck. They just round off and spin. So I'm gonna have to drive some new bolts through, but I just need to figure out where I'm gonna bolt it up. And I think right now something isn't like square. Like you can, if you look at it square on, you can see the lean. So I need to get it kind of shimmed up where it's supposed to be. I don't know if I have that passenger side fender bolted down all the way tight either, but I'm gonna get it kind of shimmed up where I want it to be. But I need all of this put together so I can get the cab exactly where it's supposed to be, because I need to measure off the frame rail and get it all squared up perfect before I do anything. So that's a lot of time in itself, just moving things. You know, you're talking moving something 3/8 of an inch just to get it squared up. But I think I can sneak some sort of a smaller rod in here and especially if I have the fan out, then I'll have lots of clearance and I can run electric fans. So I've just been kind of test fitting things while I've got everything kind of close to where I want it. And the heater box will not fit with the turbo in the spot it's in, but I think if I flip the manifold, it'll put it up over kind of up here, and it might just clear. And then there's a chance. I'm kind of looking for a different hood, a shittier hood that I can hack a hole into and run a hood stack. But that's kind of what I'm into right now. And I've got most of the bolts out. I'm just kind of taking my time, sprayed a few of them. They're coming out really easy, but I do not want to break off any inside of the head, so I'm just taking it easy, taking my time. So there's the turbo manifold out. I took it out. A lot of the other reason I took it out is because this bolt, or this nut on holding the turbo on, is rounded off. So I can maybe use some more aggressive tactics to get it off now that I can put it on the bench and heat it up good. Get a pair of vice grips on it or something, because it's rounded right off. But the other two are also a real pain in the ass to get at while it's in the truck, so I can take them out. Because I think I'm gonna have to flip the manifold and then flip the turbo as well, and that'll put the turbo on top of almost on top of the motor. Because if I flipped the manifold as it is, it would be pointing in the wrong direction, so I have to spin it around anyway. So I'm gonna have to get those off, but not right this second.